Hello and welcome to the Retail Podcast. Now, we're a week away from this amazing event that lots of people who are in the grocery world have on their calendar. It will be my first grocery shop, but who better than the president of not only Grocery Shop, but Shoptalk as well, Sophie Wawro, to join us this morning from New York to talk about these two phenomenal events. But Sophie, I've seen you on stage. And now to get the same. And
this is our first time meeting sort of virtually face to face.
Yeah,
that we've been in the same rooms many times.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the odd thing. I was like, I've seen you talk a lot, but this is the first time face to face virtually. I would love for you to share your story because I have to be honest. I was inspired by seeing the talent that you have brought into Shoptalk, the diversity, going for 50-50 female present, like these really cool things. You've made it happen. So before we get to all that, let's talk about Sophie for 1 second about how did you end up becoming the president of Shoptalk and Grocery Shop?
Sure, no problem. Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Alex. So you can probably hear from my accent, I'm not a New Yorker. I'm not an American by nationality. I'm a Scot, grew up in Edinburgh. I've spent most of my career in, I would say, the intersection of tech and events. So those are kind of my two happy places. So I've worked in EdTech, FinTech, gone kind of outside of events and worked in a couple of startups in the sort of virtual learning space, be part of a VC for a little while. But really that's my very happiest place is right at the intersection of tech and events. So I have always kind of segued in and out of that world. And I spent 6 years leading Money 2020 in Europe, which is one of the biggest fintech events globally. And that was kind of how I made my way into Shoptalk world. So I joined Shoptalk a couple of years ago, moved to New York from the UK, and have been so warmly welcomed into retail world that I don't think I'll be looking back. So and had this most wonderful job in retail, I think, because we get to sit at this really wonderful intersection where we just meet every single fascinating person in retail, it feels like, especially at this time of year. So that was kind of my quick journey through. But yeah, starting off in events world and then kind of fighting my way up into these beautiful, big, innovative tech products.
If you could go back to the Sophie who had just finished at Cambridge all those years ago, 10 years or 15 years, I can't know, I'm not going to, however long.
In that ballpark.
Yeah. What would you say to that, Sophie? Because I try and sort of encourage allyship, but I know it's really difficult for female leaders and the path to becoming a leader has been difficult. So what would you say to that, Sophie?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Alex. We think about it quite a lot, actually, especially in the context of thinking about how we can present female leaders on our stages. So I think about this topic around female leadership quite a lot. I think for me that the biggest lesson I've learned is, and maybe quite a straightforward one actually, but it's around authenticity. I think it's really tempting to think that with, that there's some strides being made towards more women in leadership roles, that the goal is then to somehow emulate, and I think actually that's a lesson I've never found to work particularly well for me. I've had incredible female leaders above me, but always the way I've thought about it is, I've used it as a learning opportunity, but always had to kind of find my own way of doing things, which doesn't really look like any of the leaders I've worked for, actually. So it's a piece of advice I always give to the incredible women on my team and around me, is to really think about, what your kind of authentic path is through, and being able to find a way to show up for work every day in a way that feels like yourself. So yeah, it feels very quite a trite one, honestly, Alex, but I think it has made all the difference to me. I think, all the times in my career that I've been trying to be super corporate, for example, which I'm not super corporate. I'm actually working today because I love it. Filming today, but I'm not a super corporate person, for example, and finding my own path that felt like I could show up for work in a way that felt like me and felt authentic with people I worked with was the thing that really made the difference.
I think it takes courage. It's only the only reason that can resonate to anyone, especially to myself, having worked so much. You have to have courage to be yourself. So I think if you're able to be that brave from early on to embrace who you are, I think it's great advice, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and try to create that environment for other people as well, right? Where it's when you see people showing up in a way that's maybe different than the way others show up, and allowing a safe space for that to be okay.
and this is what I've noticed as an attendee of all of these events for 13, 15 odd years, is how you've sort of sparkled that into your two, well, they're not two events, there's many events in the year now. Just going back into the sort of Sophie before she gets to Shoptalk Grocery Shop, if there's one thing you could go back, so obviously be authentic, that's the piece of advice that you had. What would you do differently? What would be the one thing that you think you would do differently?
It's a really good question. I try and be a believer in the fact that, everything kind of happens for a reason. So I look back at all the different roles I've had and think it was there for a purpose. I think it's really tempting when you're in your 20s, I think, to want to sort of try everything. And I do think that is quite a good approach. But I think for me personally, I kind of knew when I'd found my happy space and I knew it was in events. And I kept sort of drifting out of it and trying other things and then coming back into it. And I think actually I got a lot from sort of finding that landing pad that felt good to me. And so I think it was kind of, maybe that's the piece of advice I would give myself actually, is to just kind of trust my guts a little bit more and not to kind of have to do things just because that's what everybody's doing is, move jobs every 2 years and, know more value and make sure you're getting that value from the companies you work for, but actually just to really kind of appreciate that, I kind of know I found my happy place and trust my gut on it.
Two good nuggets. And we'll move on because I really want to dive into these two sort of flagship events for you. We'll start with Grocery Shop and then we'll go to Shoptalk Full. One of the main questions I have when I'm talking to people about these events, people still, surprisingly, are a little bit confused. Who is Grocery Shop for? I was looking at your, actually, I'll share it here. Here we go. So we've got Grocery Shop coming next Monday, right? The 7th. So tell
me. On Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, no,
it's very close now.
So who's this event for?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So Grocery Shop is for anyone who is thinking about innovation within the grocery and CPG space. That means that it can be anybody who's in a tech role, in a marketing role. They can be on the retailer side, they can be in consumer-facing brands, they can be on the technology provider side. But all of them are kind of aligned around the same thing, which is they're people who are not happy with the status quo and want to drive things forward. So that typically tends to be the thing that unites all of our delegates, is that kind of urge to do better, the urge to make the world smoother or more efficient or more customer-centric than it is right now. So that the delegates come from a huge range of backgrounds, but those are kind of the big three buckets, I would say, is, people working in kind of innovation and marketing and tech roles within grocers, within CPG type brands, and then also on the tech provider side. So that's kind of our three big buckets of audience.
Yeah, I think there's a massive, I was just sharing it there. There's a testament to how, good or successful your event has been by the number of CEOs that come to speak at your event. I'm like, what's the magic there? So when you think about those three people that sort of come to Grocery Shop, what would you like them to leave with? So they're on the plane home somewhere in the US because they're going to have to, it's from Las Vegas, fly somewhere. What would you like them to be thinking as they fly home?
So I think there's a few different things that we try and set up to kind of let people take their own journeys. And frankly, people come for really, really different reasons. So there's a lot of people who come to learn, and that might be learning from what's going on stage, but it might also be learning more typically actually from their peers, as they navigate the event themselves. And I think for those people, it's really about getting a glimpse of what the future could be. That's the thing that I love hearing that we've left people with, is it's something a little bit more tangible than inspiration, I think, but it's that kind of feeling of actually something really extraordinary is possible. That kind of, that there's a big gap between what we are doing and what we could be doing. So kind of a sense of really sparking people's imagination and then giving them the connections to actually make that real. So that's quite a big part of it. I think there is a really big piece of it as well that's about, sounds quite pragmatic, but kind of efficiency. We really love people to kind of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. We love efficiency. Yeah, exactly. So we really want people to leave as well feeling like that was the busiest 3 days of my year, but God, was it worth it? That was 6 months of business or months of learning that happened in that period of time. So we want people to leave feeling exhausted, frankly, full of new connections, new ideas, all of that kind of stuff. We want people to love having done it as well. We spend a lot of time thinking about how, the delivery mechanism, for all of our content and our networking to make sure that it feels really fun and organic and natural for people. I mean, networking is such an unnatural activity for so many people,
I'll tell you what, I hate it.
Like, deeply unpleasant. Yeah, so we really try and create all those wonderful opportunities for it to actually just feel easy and simple, and like you're surrounded by the people who get you and get how you see the world, and are on the same mission that you are. So those are the kinds of things that we love to leave people feeling when they leave the show.
Final question on Grocery Shop before we go to Shoptalk. I know you would have started planning this literally the day after the show last year.
Yeah.
What's one of the surprising things as you've gone through the year and you've been talking to the CEOs and you've been talking to potential speakers and your team? What's one thing that surprised you in the planning of this year's show?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Alex. I think for me, it's been around this really strong desire that we can feel from the community to actually feel more like a global grocery community, which has been really, really interesting. So every conversation we have typically ends the same way when we say, what could we add more of into the show that you haven't seen or that would add value that you don't get elsewhere? Yeah. We hear over and over again from people that they want to see the best of what's going on in other parts of the world. So a lot of people very interested in grocery in Asia, for example. We see a lot of Americans who really want to get into what's going on in different specific parts of Europe and vice versa. So that's been really interesting for us because Grocery Shop has been, to date, quite a North American event. Yeah. And you see on the agenda, it's still about 75% North American. But we can feel this really, really strong desire to get this kind of real beautiful mix of global case studies. That's something we're going to be really doubling down on for next year, is bringing a much more international audience together. But it's been really interesting to see and to hear some of those case studies, that people are aware of really interesting grocery innovation that they'd love to see brought to life.
100%. I think grocers always want to know what's happening around the world and what should they be prepared for, having worked with two of the big ones for such a long time. Okay, Shoptalk Fall. And this is the crazy thing. It's not enough that you've just got over one massive event. You're going over to this is the first time you're having a fall event, right?
It is, yeah. So we have had in the calendar for the last 2 or 3 years, we've had 3 events. So we've had Shoptalk Spring, which is our kind of flagship in Las Vegas. We've had Grocery Shop in the autumn time, in the fall, and we've had Shoptalk Europe, which is in the summer in Barcelona. But this year, yes, we've got a new baby in the family. So Shoptalk Fall, this is the first time we're running it. It's going to be in Chicago. So again, for us, it's a very different kind of event than we've done before. Different location, different feel, different vibe. Very much the kind of the Shoptalk you know and love in terms of the seniority of speakers. The big star names on the agenda who are going to be talking about some, really, really candid insights into what's going on in their businesses, the fun, the parties, all of that stuff, all of the stuff that kind of makes Shoptalk is there. But we're having a lot of fun with, seeing what this product can be when we take it A, outside of Las Vegas, and B, have a slightly different focus for it. So, Shoptalk in the spring is typically known as, it isn't an e-commerce event, but we do really often get described as an e-commerce event. We do cover the full sort of unified commerce journey, but it is kind of known primarily for its online focus. So we've actually kind of gone the opposite way for Shoptalk Fall. We're leaning a little bit more heavily into in-store content and that end of the unified commerce journey, and bringing together some really different folks to have different kinds of conversations. It's a slightly more senior, slightly smaller group, but kind of more seniorly audience in that one. So it'd be really interesting to have a different, new member of the family.
I got you. And Ja Rule's not going to be flying over to Chicago to do a Chicago.
No. So we've got Ja Rule is staying in Vegas with Grocery Shop, and we've got Busta Rhymes coming to do Chicago. So
is that being released? Because I haven't seen an email on that.
Hot off the press. You can have it first.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Who makes all of these decisions on who you will have there? I think you had Sister Sledge in
Barcelona, yeah.
And then Ludacris in spring, and now you've got Ja Rule and Busta Rhymes.
And Busta Rhymes, yeah. We did actually find a great photo of the two of them together performing. So yeah, we used that with the team when we announced it to the team who we had on stage.
What's the logistics on Shoptalk Fall? I forget the name of the centre. What's the name of the centre?
It's McCormick Place, yeah. So it's a really fantastic venue. It's the part of the venue that we're in is brand new, just opened really recently, beautiful, kind of, very different feel. It's actually going to feel, I think, a little bit more like our Barcelona show. Vegas hotels are kind of one.
Barcelona feels like a festival. It feels like a festival, right? And I remember everyone talks about retail as as theatre.
Maybe both.
Yeah, no, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. Retail is therapy for me. But anyway, it's this sort of whole theatre that it takes you, sweeps you away. As you said, it does help you disconnect from where you are. It does help you network, and it's very unique in the stuff that it's bringing to the industry. So thank you for that, because as I said, having soggy sandwiches in between talks has been a massive bug.
Yeah.
Or you go and join a queue that's like a mile long. We've got 5 minutes left. I know it's crazy to talk about the future, because literally we've got these 2 massive flagship events for you that are happening. But because you are looking at next year's Barcelona's already doing, next year's, how do you see the future growing on your keynote speakers? What are the other themes that are sort of, what do you see? What do you see as the future?
It's a really good question. So there are a couple of big things that are going on in our world. Some are kind of new bits and pieces that we're launching, and then others are kind of, like you just described, kind of the mission that we're on, I suppose. So kind of in the first category, we've got 2 big things coming up in the next 18 months. So one is the new market, which is the event, kind of the show within a show that we're launching at Shoptalk Spring in Las Vegas, which is the new home for retail media. So we're very excited about that event. It's going to be incredible. I was actually just looking at the visuals for it a couple of days ago, and it's shaping up really beautifully. So so the future home for retail media is the new market at Shoptalk. So that's coming up in March. And then we actually have, this one's super hot off the press and a little bit like wink, wink, secret squirrel. We have a new launch coming up in early 2026. Which I'll be able to talk about very soon. So I'll tell you about it. I promise I'll tell you about it. We're on site in Chicago. But so a new launch, which is more like grocery, so a vertical specific event.
Okay. I won't wish you anyone.
And then in the sort of mission direction, it's a really big focus for us. So you can see from the lineup for Chicago, but also from all the speaker lineups that we are pushing a diversity agenda very, very strongly.
Which is really difficult, right? Because you're fucking the industry, because the industry isn't made with 50% parity in the boardroom.
Correct.
And I think that's super difficult, but good on you for doing it.
Yeah. And I think our point was, you see a lot of, a shocking number still of manels.
All male
panels. You see it, really, really sort of shockingly so. So the challenge that I gave the team for Shoptalk Fall was, okay, I know you can do 50-50. We've done 50-50 at almost all of our shows in the last 2-3 years. So I know you can do that. Can you go one more just to kind of, throw the gauntlet for others, I suppose, just to prove the point. I don't want anybody to be able to be in a position to say it's not possible. Yeah. So what the team have done is it's an all-female speaker lineup. So you can have a look at the lineup. The lineup is just as strong as
which
any other female. This is Shoptalk Fall. So we have CEO of Glossier, CEO of Build-A-Bear. We have COO of Ulta Beauty. We have just incredible lineup. Chief Data Officer, Chief Loyalty Officer from McDonald's. The lineup is stellar. It's just as good as any lineup we've ever had. Yeah. But it's all women. Wow. And actually for Shoptalk Fall, we're at a 60-40 gender balance for that one. And that's not something that we need to do every single time, but I really wanted to have to be a case study of just, to lay down the gauntlet for the industry, just that it is possible. It is possible. Yeah. You do have to work at it to kind of, to put the right mix of people on stage to do the kinds of things that we're wanting to do. But it's absolutely possible if you work at it. So we do a couple of other things like that. We have free childcare at every single one of our shows now. Again, for that same kind of inclusion message, we want to make sure that anybody who wants to come to the show can come to the show and get access to the learning and the content and the networking. So a couple of big things like that we're doing to just make sure that the shows are as open as they can be and that they're displaying the best of what retail can be, not reflecting the industry that we see around us necessarily at all times, but, we're not afraid of sort of shaping, molding a little bit. So yeah, that's our intention, is to try and kind of display the retail industry in the best possible way it could be, so that people can see what it could be if we worked at it.
I'll say it for you. You're setting a new standard.
Thank you, Alex.
I see it as someone who turns up to these things around the world. I'm going to be super respectful to your time. As I said, I'm sure there's a queue of things that need to get resolved before.
Mostly fun things at this point, actually. But yes, there is a long shopping list of things that we need to get sorted pre-show.
That's fantastic. Sophie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to seeing you on stage in a week's time.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you.